Just tell us what tab to turn to.
Good afternoon, Senators. It's Wednesday, January 25th. We have the pleasure of having VGS in here. We're going to go down through the governor's recommend FY 24 and 25 capital budget proposal. We're going to start off with the commissioner, Jennifer Fitch.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So for the record, my name is Jennifer Fitch and I'm the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. And is it okay if I also introduce my counterparts that are here today?
Yeah. My name is Eric Filthorn, and I am the Principal Assistant at the Department of Buildings and General Services.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. It is a pleasure to meet you all, Senators. I look forward to it.
I'm Joe Aja. I'm the Director for Design and Construction for Building and General Services. Thank you for having us.
They are here to fill in any of the gaps that I may have, and they are welcome to jump in at any time. So we're going to kind of follow along what we did in House Corrections and Institutions this morning.
Hold on one second, Liz, are you going to be able to get that on?
She can take a little time to pop that up because the first couple things I'm going to talk about are not on the presentation. So you
Okay.
can pop it up anytime, but don't feel rushed. You just tell me when. Okay, I will do that. So we're going to start on section 20, which is page 74 in your books. And we're going to briefly talk about the properties that we are requesting to sell. And the reason why we want to bring it up now is because a lot of times, because it's in the back of the book, we don't often have an opportunity to come and testify. So I just wanted to provide the thumbnails on our request to sell and why we're asking to sell. So the first building BGS is requesting to sell is 110 State Street. I was saying this morning when I first started out, it took me several years to know all of our buildings because we do have 232 of them across the state. But if you're walking down State Street, it's in the corner where Davis Avenue and State Street come together, and it's kind of on that corner across the street. And it was the original National Life building. So it was the first National Life building that was ever built in Vermont. Obviously, subsequent to that, they built 133, which where now is the second building, and now obviously the National Life is up on the hill. We are asking to sell this building because it is antiquated and it no longer functions well for us. What that means is we can't optimize the space, so we can't optimize the number of desks, for example, in that building. The staircases are very narrow. The elevator is undersized. The only way you have ADA access into the building is through a lift. It now needs about $2.5 million in investment because it needs a new roof. It needs new siding, a whole bunch of other issues with the building. So it was another one of these where it's inefficient, it's antiquated, and the tenants that are in that building are state's attorney. And we had two proposed locations to move them to within state space, either the connector space, which is between the pavilion and the Supreme Court, or we also have vacant office space at 13 Green Mountain Drive, which was the former office space for the Department of Liquor. It's where the warehouse is, and there's an office building right next to it. It's completely vacant right now. So we have two different opportunities to consolidate them within state-owned space. This is the last component and piece of the puzzle for our Montpelier space plan. So this was going on well before the pandemic, has nothing to do with telework. But we've been looking to basically get out of expensive, antiquated buildings that don't function well for us, and to get out of expensive lease space and to collapse into well-functioning state-owned space. So that's why.
Are you going to do that throughout the state with less people are at their office? Are you trying to consolidate?
We are taking those opportunities as we can. We have a pretty small staff. So we've been focused on Montpelier. The next focus will be in Rutland. So I think we're going to go by space as we have staff and resources to do it. One of the things I talked about in the prior committee is that you don't want to sell too many buildings because the pendulum is going to swing, right? Right now we're in heavy telework. Pendulum will swing back at some point, I anticipate, to maybe a little bit more presence in the office. So we just want to be really strategic that we don't oversell because it's going to cost a lot of money for us to either build, lease, buy in the future. So we just want to be really strategic, which is why I think the way we're doing it is actually a great way, where we're going location by location. We're being very strategic about what we're requesting to sell.
So 110 is 3 floors?
Yes, it is.
And is there a lot of land too? I know there's like a parking lot or something behind it.
So we have a large parking lot behind it, and when I spoke with the governor, we recognized that in addition to the building, we will have to carve out some parking spaces to go with the building as well when we sell it. It's a very small lot.
Yeah. The lot size is, for the record, Joe Age with BGS. The lot size is actually when you drive through to go to the bank.
Yep.
The drive-through, That driveway is owned by the bank. It is not part of 110
Oh,
State Street.
okay.
So it is very small, piece of property.
So it's, just to be clear where it's at, because I thought I knew where it was at, and I think you said it's right over here, right next to the pavilion. You turn right by the pavilion,
It's
go down the
across
other.
the street from the pavilion.
Okay,
Across from the gas station.
okay.
Okay, it's Taylor
That's
Street.
okay, I'm sorry.
Taylor Street.
Okay.
Sorry, I think I said.
If you leave here,
Yeah.
you come
But
to the
that's not
road,
what there's-
just walk right down to the bottom of that road, it's right across the street.
Okay, oh, okay, so it's.
At the same time, motor vehicles.
Yes.
Yeah,
if you want, I have it on my phone if you wanna see it.
Oh, I'm glad we talked about
I
that.
just got that.
Okay, I was thinking it was in a wrong
Did you wanna
location.
see it?
I thought that's what.
It's there.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, good location. Yeah.
It's a great location. We believe that when we put it up for sale, if we get approval to do so, that we'll get quite a few
That
bidders.
would be housing, maybe they could turn it to housing.
That's what I was gonna ask. Do you
I
have
know.
time to evaluate it for housing?
That isn't something that BGS would do because it's not within our mission.
Everybody, I know we're talking about that. More and more commercial buildings that are being used can be considered for housing. It's like, a big percentage is a shell. You gotta do the inside.
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's really up to whoever wants to
Yeah.
buy it. They can determine what they want to use it for. So,
We do work hip in hip with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and that is more in their wheelhouse.
Okay.
And so they are aware that we do want to sell this building. And when the time comes, if we get approval, they will probably help us in terms of getting the word out and working with whatever partnerships that they have as well.
So what is the timeline? I mean, this is in next year's budget.
So if you gave us approval to sell, it becomes, what's the word I want to look at? It becomes effective upon passage of the capital bill, which generally happens in May. And then from that time frame, right, we need to first, usually we vacate the building, so we would need to work on relocating state's attorney. I've already talked to John Campbell, so he is very supportive and looking forward to working with us on new space. And then once we move them, the next step is to have fire safety come in because they'll do a review of the building, just much like you'll, when you sell your personal house, right? And you have a building inspection that's done, you may need to make some upgrades to your house before you can sell it. Or that becomes part of the negotiation when you sell. So same thing with the state, right? We have to make sure it's compliant with codes before we sell it. So typically speaking, on the last couple of buildings, we've had to do a little bit of work, and then what we do is we put it on the market. There is old antiquated language in terms of how we sell a building, and this is the third time we're asking to make it more modern, so if we could get some support on that, that would be great. But right now, it requires us to do things like post it at the town hall, post it at the library, right? I'm sure at one point in time that was very effective, but with the website today and real estate companies today and the way they can market, I think it's far more effective if we could modernize that statute.
Yeah. Yeah, we can meet.
He does it for the hundreds.
So we are hoping to do that, but that's the process. And then the other question that I got, which I think is a good one at HCI, was what happens to the proceeds of the sale? So if you don't, we can work together. So a good example of that is we just sold 13 Baldwin recently. And the way we appropriated the sale was $300,000 was allocated back to major maintenance. If you don't say this is where we want it to go, then it goes to Senator Mountain's point, it goes to the bottom line. And then you get to decide how you want to reappropriate those funds.
I like major maintenance because you always got money, need money for that. That's good.
But it's in the capital.
Yeah.
It's in the capital bill.
I mean,
there
it's
will be
not a fund,
language-
it's not a capital fund though, right, but it's in the capital.
It's in the capital bill and
Their
it's
schedule of accounts or whatever.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So the other building that we're asking to sell, and Secretary Clouser talked about it a little bit yesterday, is 108 Cherry in Burlington. And this goes more towards building utilization and telework. So as we all know, most employees were coming to work 5 days a week. Before the pandemic, we were forced to go home just like everybody else overnight and figure out how to work in this remote environment. I struggled for a couple of days because I'm not savvy in IT and Teams, but I figured it out. And now I'm an ace at Teams. So I think the state did a great job during the pandemic, working remotely and responding and providing all the services to Vermonters. I think we did a fantastic job. Now we're sort of after the pandemic, most agencies and departments have adopted some level of telework. BGS, for example, for my central office staff, it's 3 days a week minimum in the office and 2 days a week at home. Some agencies and departments have elected to have their staff full remote. The way that we recommend that at BGS is that it really depends how collaborative your job is. So if you don't do a lot of collaboration, you're primarily heads down, then working remotely is great for you, and you would likely work more remote than others. If your job is highly collaborative, like it is at BGS, then you need to be in the office more often, because we call home space me space, we call office space we space. And so that's for the collaboration and the communication and the culture, onboarding, those kinds of things, which are very important to the functioning of an organization. So we're in this pattern now where we're still trying to figure out what's the right cadence for telework versus in person. We're still going through that. But when we have the opportunity to consolidate space, we're starting to have those conversations with our clients and customers around how much are you teleworking? And we're taking that into consideration when we're doing the space layout. 3 days or more, you get a desk. 2 days or less, you share a desk with somebody else. And so that's generally speaking how we draw the line.
You still the old building down near your office?
We moved to the 5th floor of 133.
Oh.
Actually, last Valentine's Day was the first day we were all together. We were at 5 different locations in the complex. There was an opportunity for us to all co-locate. I'm a huge in-office person and a huge collaborator. So we have never all been together before. There's a lot of crossover in the work that they do between planning and property management, design and construction, operations and maintenance, security, and then also the Office of Purchasing and Contracting. They have never been embedded before with BGS, and they are fantastic. And we do a lot of contracting across the teams. So now they can just walk down the hall, talk to somebody in Office of Purchasing and Contracting, and it's working much more effectively than it ever did.
You're in the old house.
The legislature took it. Actually, to be clear, I offered it up because at one point during the pandemic, the legislature felt that they needed more space. There's been a lot of
council.
Yeah, so it has been selected for legislative council. My understanding is in the last 18 months or so, Janet Miller has been leading an effort to update those buildings and renovate 2 and 4 Aiken. But my understanding of the plan, it's not Jennifer's plan though, so it could change, is that it has legislative council is the group that they're looking to potentially allocate to that space. That's my understanding. But we raised our hand. We were actually very nice because they wanted space as close to the State House as possible. It is the closest building, and I really wanted to co-locate staff. So we moved down to the 5th floor of 133. I think it was a really good partnership.
Yeah, 133 is the building right over here.
The tax building.
Tax building, yeah.
And the second National Life building.
And beautiful.
And beautiful. Yes, we were very happy to all be together.
Yeah.
So, so the sale, because 108 is underutilized, because the Agency of Human Services has for a long time wanted to co-locate the health department, which falls within AHS, back down to Waterbury and have all of their departments in one location. All of those factors are driving this decision about the sale of 108 Cherry. The plan is to leave about 80 to 90 people who provide direct client services to the community up in the Burlington area to be in lease space. We are looking for lease space for them now. And then the rest of the staff, which is about 375 staff member, would come down and basically be absorbed into the Waterbury State Office Complex that is also highly underutilized right now. So hopefully what this means is we'll be able to fully utilize that space again using a telework sharing a desk model.
That's good.
So that's the plan for that. So we're gonna flip back now to page 1, section 1. And I'm also gonna have my spreadsheet here, which is helpful, and the presentation, that'd be perfect, thank you. All right, so we have some pros in this room who go through this with us every year. And there are some line items that I'm going to highlight are even more essential to BGS. The first one is statewide major maintenance, which you're seeing up on the screen. So really statewide major maintenance is to address deferred maintenance in our buildings. And deferred maintenance means something that we already should have replaced and haven't yet done so, whether it's a roof or a boiler or some other system component in the building, but it's beyond its age or it's failed and it needs to be replaced. This is the most important line item we have in the capital bill. This is the bulk of our work, again, maintaining our buildings. Typically, on average, we get about $7.5 to $8 million every year. This year, we've increased that ask to 10 million in FY '24, 8.5 in FY '25. Here's the great news. During Tropical Storm Irene and the following response, we had to take several staff members from design and construction and focus them on the Waterbury State Office Complex. That meant we didn't have enough project managers to really get money out the door for major maintenance. It has taken us a while to catch up. This past year is the first year where we have spent $10 million. And so we're now at a rate where we're spending more than what we're taking in a given year, which is great. That's where we wanted to be. And so we could definitely use this money, and we could definitely spend this money. And this money is very critical for everything that we do. Also, just to add on top of that, there is a nice little slide on page 3 of your book. And first I'll point you to page 2. So examples of proposed projects are above: flooring, elevators, repaving projects, heating systems, building systems in general. But also, how much should we be investing every single year? Well, you should be investing 1.2 to 2.5% of the replacement value. The replacement value of our buildings today is $600 million. So if you take 1.5 to 2.5%, that's in your book. That's that band that you're seeing on the next page. You maybe don't have it. Oh, you do have it. It's right there.
So, yeah.
Go to the next. There you go.
Okay,
Right
there's
there.
multiple pages.
So it's that band. So the yellow band there is really what we should be investing. The red band below is what we've been acquiring through the capital bill. You can see that we're getting less than what we should be for major maintenance. And that top line there is really to show the replacement value of our buildings over time. So at some point, what I anticipate is that BGS, as we can get more money out the door, we will be requesting more money on this line item over time to make sure that we're taking in the amount of money that we should really be investing in those buildings over time. If you don't invest in your building at the right time or in infrastructure, I'm sure you hear this in transportation all the time, it will cost you more money down the line to replace these systems.
Yeah.
So it's all about getting in at the right time to make that right level of investment. And that's really what this band is
The
about.
problem is, the cost has gone so high that something we used to do for 1 million before, it's costing $1.5 million. So
That's right.
you've got to keep up because I know in transportation, we got projects that go out, we think 10 million, they're 16 million. It's crazy. The inflation, that's not going to come down. That's going to be there because wages have gone up dramatically in construction materials, and that's not going to come back. So you may have more money, but you're not getting more done because,
Because of the increase in the price.
And I'm sure you do a lot of contractors, and they're raising their prices because they're paying their employees $25, $30, $35 an hour. I've been looking at some of the bids in the agency of transportation. It's crazy. Something we did paving, 120 million, but we only get about the same amount of paving we did 2 years ago, 100 million. Because the inflation, especially when you're dealing with so many buildings, material and labor is gone through the roof.
Yes.
It
makes it difficult when planning on a project.
And it's not gonna go back. It's not gonna go back down. Let me tell you, once that is established, you're not gonna say to that person, I gave you a raise this year, next year I'm taking it back.
Right.
No, that's here to stay, so you got your answer.
Yes, please.
I meant, ideally, where would you like your budget to be for spending? Do you want to follow the
Ideally-
bottom of this, the top of this, somewhere between of this band?
If you're asking me, I'm gonna say top. If you're asking the administration, they would probably say bottom, not because they don't care, but because there's so much pressure in the capital bill, right? And we want to make sure that we're funding as many projects as we possibly can. And the answer probably is somewhere in the middle. A great question.
But definitely higher than
Joe,
where we are
Joe
now.
sounds like he has an answer.
And if I may add to that is probably closer to the bottom because this is just major maintenance. There's still other, if you look at the line items that we're presenting, there's roof replacements, but due to the cost of the high roof replacements, it becomes a line item instead of coming out of the capital bill. And when it's $1 million, $1.5 million, that would devastate our major maintenance. So even though that's what you're supposed to be sending, what that graph's not showing you are the line items that are there. So
I support the governor's recommend, sir.
Yes, we always support the governor's recommend. And we support this year. It's just looking at the long term and what requests we may have for future years to come. But we're very happy with what was recommended by the governor this year because again, we put an original request for 8.5 million for FY '24 and '25, and they gave us, or they're proposing to allocate 10 million to us this year in FY '24. So we are very grateful for the administration for doing that. The next one is physical security enhancements. So that's the next slide. So this really has to do with, so one of the lovely things about the BGS commissioner is that I am responsible for all safety and security in state-owned buildings. When we say safety and security, we don't mean law enforcement. We mean things like card readers, panic buttons, lockdown buttons. So basically your physical infrastructure that makes our buildings more safe and secure. This is an annual appropriation that we ask for. $250,000 is what we ask for each year. You'll see that that was supported by the administration. And really what this does is either we bring new buildings online and we need that funding to, put in that security infrastructure. Maybe the tenant group has changed, and so we need greater security infrastructure. And we also need to maintain what we have. And so oftentimes, a card reader may break down and we have to go replace it. So this, again, is a very essential line item in our capital bill. One thing I just want to note is that our current system is getting old. And so while we have asked for a level amount of money in the next 2 years, I do see a larger appropriation request coming in future years for a new system, because the one we have now is just old and antiquated and it's going to have to be modernized.
What is the picture, Jennifer, in the book we have, this thing with 6 little things in it?
Joe? Eric?
I can describe that because what that is a board on the wall in the basement of 133 that contains an example of each of the major electronic components that the security our staff deal with every day. So I couldn't identify each individual one, but basically it's the brains behind all of those boxes.
Okay. Thank you.
So again, another essential line item for us in the capital bill. The next one is statewide planning, reuse, and contingency. This is my, sorry.
Go back to the security
Yes.
just for 1 second. So we had a briefing yesterday from the chief, and he started talking about cameras and here and all of that. Do you know much about any of that?
So there's a carve out for the BGS commissioner. My main, I am basically supposed to focus on executive branch space. So the judicial branch and the legislative branch are responsible for security infrastructure in their buildings. Now I say that, and we have a lot of courthouses where we have co-located executive staff branch. So we work together to determine what we need for safety and security infrastructure. If there is something in addition, let's say they want an extra camera or they want an extra card reader, we will work with them to accommodate that because that's a programmatic request, but they are responsible for their own safety and security. Same thing with the legislative branch. So anything inside the walls of the State House is the legislative branch's, is the responsibility of the legislative branch.
So Sergeant of Arms
It's the
or?
responsibility of Sergeant of Arms,
Okay.
yes. At arms, yes.
So where does her expertise lie? As far as in that, I mean, who does she go to support on that? I mean, when you start talking about, like with you guys, I mean, you want cameras, you want this, you want that, you go to your team, you figure it out, and that's what you do. So what happens in this case right here, that we're gonna get the best system that we can get for the best bang on the buck, where does she lead? Where does she lead on?
She hired a consultant. That's it. She doesn't,
Okay,
I mean, we're always there and we're happy to offer technical assistance if asked to the judicial branch and the
I
legislative
know if they
branch.
did it when they put speakers in the house, and a new speaker system, they look at outside consultants, they get their prices, expertise in that field, yes, they'll do it with cameras.
yes, Eric.
I think there's also some, I mean, we consult with them, the fire alarm panels, I believe those are BGS functions. So sometimes the fire alarm panels will interact with security systems. And so there are places where,
There's integration.
yeah, there's integration, and we even have a committee that meets monthly with our internal project management staff and Janet and other folks from the State House. So we're always looking at the projects that they're doing, that we're doing, and go, oh, wow, that's going to connect. Okay, we should talk about that. So it's an island, but it's not an island. There's a ferry.
That's right.
But I would say the legislative branch,
Right there.
I would say the legislative branch determines what their programmatic needs are. And
Absolutely.
So I mean, you can have competing systems together. I mean, if you guys are in one building and you got cameras in there and all of that, and I mean, it could end up being, okay, well, we want this system over here. So it just, you could have two different systems within 100 yards of one another or less.
That's
And,
correct.
yeah,
And even across, the executive branch, the needs of, the camera needs of a correctional facility are very different from that of a state office building. But again, we're all kind of talking all the time, so.
right, okay.
Yes, Margie Clark, who's no longer with us unfortunately, she was an ace, she's gone to the Agency of Natural Resources and ran this program. A couple of years ago, went through a process of basically standardizing what we put in for security systems based on the type of department that you are. So for instance, for client services that maybe receive more threats than other offices, they're gonna be at a level 4. BGS, who, we don't have client services, nobody comes to visit us, and we don't get threats traditionally. We are gonna be down at, a level 1 or a level 2. So now we're standardizing how we deploy our security equipment again, based on your threat your portfolio of people you serve and your threat profile.
Okay, good.
The next one is my second favorite after major maintenance, which is planning, reuse, and contingency. I talked the other day at length about the importance of planning. Reuse is when we move an agency or department to a space and we have to refit that space for their needs, and that's what's called reuse. And then with respect to contingency, per statute, the BGS commissioner is authorized up to $50,000. So if a project if a project is more expensive than the amount of funding that we have, I can appropriate up to $50,000. The Secretary of the Agency of Administration can appropriate up to $100,000. After that, it has to go to the E-Board.
So you can actually appropriate it, not use what's already been appropriated?
I say appropriate, it's really used.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
So
sorry.
I could say, oh, okay, we've got, $500,000 that was appropriated in FY22. I'm gonna allocate $50,000 of that to XX project because it's over what we have funding for.
Right, and it's not a percentage of the project, it's just the 50,000.
That's correct.
All right, and that you need something like that, obviously.
That's correct. Especially today.
Yeah, you need to be able to do it quickly.
That's right. Montpelier State House heating, venting, and air conditioning. It sounds like, Joe, you already gave them an overview?
Tour.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right, overview, but
So this request, we are asking for an additional $7,600,000 over the next 2 years, and that is to complete construction of the replacement of the existing heating, cooling, and air conditioning system. I'm sure Joel told you, but a couple of issues that are going on. We don't have the ability to dry out the air in the summertime, and in 2018, we had mold throughout the State House as a result, and it cost $500,000 to remediate it. So that's one issue. The other issue is that in terms of airflow, the standards and best practices have changed over time. So when the system was built, we were meeting those requirements or best practices. We're no longer meeting that today in the State House.
We shut off the air here years ago, we had no air.
Told you, we want to keep you sleepy.
About that.
Until our demands are met.
That's right. Honestly.
It's taking a while.
30 years ago, we had problems with the air, here, still got the same problem.
Too much hot air.
Yeah.
So this is to take in the final amount of funding to finish that project in construction.
All right, gee, I might see for that.
The next one is the Newport Orleans Superior Court replacement. So I don't know if anybody's, actually I do know if somebody's around the Newport area, but
Oh, watch it.
if you've ever been in the existing Newport courthouse, it's small, it's antiquated, it does not function for the judicial branch nor the other tenants in the building. We have an undersized elevator that does not meet ADA requirements. The court rooms are on the 2nd and 3rd floor, and when the elevator stops working, they have to cancel court, which is not great for their operations. The parcel is really small, so there's no ability to do any kind of expansion on that site. A few years ago, we requested funding to begin a planning effort to build a brand new courthouse in downtown Newport. We did put out a land acquisition RFP seeking land. We got 6 bids back. Only 2 met the criteria, and 1 had people living in apartments in the 2nd and 3rd floors. As a general rule, the state does not like to displace people. So the one bid that we did get that we considered was the Newport Downtown Redevelopment Site, which is also known as AKA The Hole in Newport. We did try to negotiate with the receiver. We were unable to be successful. Then there was another possible opportunity, and the receiver Goldman told us, sounds like you want to move more quickly. I have another offer to consider. I think at this point, the state should look at other potential opportunities.
That building, you can't do anything with that building, the existing building?
No, it doesn't. So one of the other problems with that courthouse is that it also doesn't have, it's very small, but it also doesn't have what we call today front and back of the house. So your front of the house is your public facing area. That's where your courtrooms are, jury rooms, those kinds of things. Then there's a secure perimeter. The back of the house is where judicial staff and the judges reside. And so having that perimeter is very important to the judicial branch. You cannot do that in this building. It's just not possible. It's tall, but it's confined on each floor.
So you'll sell that building.
We will request to sell that building when we build the new building, absolutely. And the other thing I want to mention on this one is that in addition to the judicial branch, state's attorney is in this building, so they'll be co-located. Probation and parole will be co-located as well. They did move out a couple of years ago because the building is so cramped because of security concerns between the judicial branch and probation and parole, and there was no secure perimeter and there wasn't an ability to make one. And so we will be co-locating them. And right now there's a county court and a state house and a state court that will all be combined into one courthouse, Newport.
I think it's the cameras on with that tower.
On this,
Yeah, just put that one.
this is the budget.
Yep. No, maybe not. Maybe the other one. Maybe that one. There we go.
Oh, there we go. All right.
It was just off, the tower was off, I don't know what it does, but anyways.
That's where your desk level cameras are.
Well, it's blue now, so I feel better.
Okay.
Yep.
So the next one is the St. Johnsbury North State Correctional Facility in Caledonia Work Camp door control. So door controls is something we've been working on in our correctional facilities over time. Newport was the first correctional facility to go. We're currently under construction at Springfield. But the idea is we have, again, old antiquated door lock system that is becoming more challenging to maintain. In fact, at Newport, we had a couple of doors that we were not even able to lock, which is an issue. In addition to replacing this with a more modernized system, it's also being integrated with basically a computer system that also controls other building systems such as lighting, for example. And so it's far more modern, it's much more functional for the Department of Corrections, and it's vital because we need to make sure that we can maintain secure correctional facilities. So this is really the next facility after Springfield, and this is for construction. And while we're in there, the other thing to note when you're working in a correctional facility, in order to do the door lock project, we have to move the incarcerated individuals around. That is a rare and wonderful opportunity for us. So when that happens, we want to go and we want to tackle other major maintenance items while we're in there. So for example, you're going to see one of the things we're going to do is address bathrooms while we're in there. The idea is get in and get out and do it in the most cost-effective way. Montpelier 120 State Street seam lines. So for folks that might have been here at the legislature for a while, this project has come around a couple of times and unfortunately never advanced or moved forward. But 120 is an old building. It has existing steam lines in the building. Those steam lines are leaking. Over time, they will continue to leak and that may result in mold. And then that may necessitate an emergency evacuation of the building and relocation of staff. So this is a building where we have DMV has their employees in 5 days a week. So it is a very utilized building. It's very full all the time. And so the goal of this project is to replace the steam lines. Obviously, while we're there, we're going to do some additional work, such as putting down new carpet, because in order to do the steam line project, we have to actually vacate 1 or 2 floors at a time. So we will need swing space to relocate some of those employees. And then I was at National Life when this happened to me. The rest of them will probably be shuffled around in floors as they work in the building. So you might be on the first floor. If you're going to work on the first floor, now you're going to go to the 3rd floor, and so on and so forth until the building is
There's a
rehabilitated.
basement there too.
There is a
There
basement.
used to be employees down there, but they took them out of there.
Correct.
Yeah.
We still have
Operations.
your operations
BGS
maintenance
is still
office,
down
Montpelier office is down there.
Oh, are they still using it? I thought you pulled everybody out of there.
well, at some point, I would like to have a better maintenance facility, just to get it on the record, for operations and maintenance in Montpelier. It is the only place where we don't have a district garage for our staff. There's a little shack, I like to call it, behind DMV. There's no bathroom. In order to use the bathroom, they have to legally cross the railroad tracks to get to DMV to go to the bathroom. And then there's part and parcel, but they don't have one maintenance facility, and that's really what they should have. So that is a goal of mine at some point. So let's do a little plug of time. Page 17, Brattleboro Courthouse roof replacement. So you're gonna see a lot of this, as Secretary Clouser mentioned yesterday, right? Our section isn't all that exciting. And so the Brattleboro Courthouse roof has been leaking for a while. We're getting more leaks and we're seeing them in different areas of the roof. So it's finally come to a point where it no longer makes sense to continue to try to maintain this roof, and it really needs a roof replacement. And we have some lovely photos for you to look at in all things roofs.
How old is it?
The roof is, Joe,
Built in late 80s, I believe.
So it's past, it's.
It's got the original roof.
It is the original roof. There are two roofs on it. If you go back to that slide, there's a metal roof that's pitched. And then around on four sides of the pitched roof, there's a flat area that's in membrane.
Well, the roofing material has gone rich, right through the roof. I'll tell you what about roofing material, it's gone crazy. I had a roof estimate last year of 15 grand. I just got one the other day, 25,000, the same roof this spring versus last year. And the material is that's a small project compared to this. Wow.
Should have waited.
Yeah, that's right, you're right. Now I look back and why did I wait? Yeah, okay.
Can't time the market.
and then we move into
Oh, boy.
parking garages, another one of our favorites.
That was favorite.
So 32 Cherry Street parking garage. So we are requesting funds to go in and rehabilitate that garage. I'm sure folks have heard already, but the challenge with parking garages in a northern climate is that it snows and we salt. And what happens is all that moisture and snow builds on your tires as well as the salt. You go and you park in the parking garage, that salt sits on the concrete deck, and then it saturates into the concrete through cracks, gets to the reinforcing steel corrodes, and all of a sudden we got popping concrete. So that's what's going on here, and we are requesting funding to go in and rehabilitate the garage.
Is there measures that when you do this, that, so don't happen again? I mean, is there a way you can, what do you do? I mean, it's there, it's a whole building, it's.
Really, materials are getting better over time. There are some membranes we can use, similar to V-Trans, they have the same exact challenge.
Paving, they can't pave those, right? It just, paving is not good.
You
Well,
could,
the hard part is getting a paver in some of those. I mean, you're looking at a clearance sometimes of 9 feet, 9'6". So it is tight, but
Well, they get cement trucks, they gotta get those.
Or the
typically they're done first, then your building goes on top. So you work your way
Well,
out.
I'm saying
So
now.
after the fact, you'll do it through buggies. You'll have buggies carting your concrete, or you'll use a pump system. depends
Pump
on what
system,
you
a
get
lot of it with
a large enough for. But in 108 Cherry Street, we had a membrane on that one. I believe 32 Cherry Street has a membrane. So it's really about upkeep and maintenance. One of our reports that we had done to 108 Cherry Street recommended for Cherry Street, 250,000 a year in maintenance to maintain that each year. So, you know, it's once, twice a year you go through, you're hosing it down, you clean it up. Membrane, you want to make sure that any holes that are punctured, studded tires and the likes, you patch. There's a lot of that has to go cleaning out your drains and the likes of that. So
pinholing your membrane is a big issue because it actually acts like a vacuum. So if you do have any pinholes, it'll just draw it in right there.
High-rise parking like the airport, are they better in maintenance, easier in maintenance when the air is flowing through them, or?
you'll have a little bit better. However, walking through and parking at the airport, they still have that.
They
So
do that.
National
I'm
Life.
sure you got it all over, yeah.
National Life, you're probably still there when they tackled their garage. They had a large, some projects on their
They
garage
close
and
the
they're open
fourth floor every year.
to do their
Worked on it
maintenance.
for a season.
Yeah, like so.
Yeah, a good garage I've seen and heard is the one in Winooski that's by VSAC.
Oh, yeah.
It's
yeah,
really,
Yeah,
it's pretty well maintained and it's in good shape.
yeah, that's been there.
Yeah.
So we're starting to have those conversations with operations and maintenance. The challenge is how are we gonna pay for it? Because we talked about the other day, fee for space, right, is what we use to basically have rent from our tenants, for lack of a better term. And they really want us to keep fee for space down as much as possible because it's 32 million, which is a lot of money. It's also for 232 buildings, so it's a lot of buildings, but, so if we're gonna start investing $250,000 in the garage every year for preventive maintenance, which we should, the question becomes, how do we pay for it? And are we gonna start working with Joe and having it be paid out of major maintenance or some other line item because we can't pay it out of fee for space, even though it's really more of an operations and maintenance cost? So we will need to figure that one out.
Parking.
Yes. Easy one.
So the next one is statewide stormwater. So I lovingly like to call this the 3-acre rule. So basically A&R came out with the 3-acre rule several years ago. And we have identified 8 sites in the state that don't meet the 3-acre rule. And so what that means is that we need to hire a consultant to help us start with planning and design. And there's 2 options there. We can either put in more conveyance structures for stormwater, or we can pay a fee. So essentially, we're not putting in those measures, but we're paying a fee instead. The Capitol Complex is a great example of that, where we are within the floodplain. We don't meet the 3-acre rule because we're pretty expansive, we've got a lot of pavement, right? We've got a large state house lawn, which is considered impervious. And so the question is, how do you convey all that water? So across the street, one of the things that we're considering is basically putting a giant vault, for lack of a better term. You put it below the pavement, all the stormwater gets conveyed in there, it has time to settle out, so all those particulates settle out, and then eventually it goes out to the river. We're not sure how we're gonna tackle that on this side of the street because there's a lot of infrastructure under the road. So you've got steam lines, you've got water lines, you've got sewer lines, you've got electrical, you've got a lot of things going underneath State Street. So that may be a situation where versus putting in infrastructure, we may have to pay a fee for that 3-acre rule instead. And that's what this funding is for. On Failure 111 State Street, stack area renovation, HVAC upgrade, and elevator upgrades. This one is near and dear to my heart. One of the things as the BGS commissioner I feel very passionate about, and as we continue to talk about optimizing space in state buildings, whenever we have vacant space, a couple of things happen. There's still a cost of operating and maintaining that space, even though we don't have a tenant. That means that the cost of that is now spread across all the other tenants in that district. So it means everybody's getting a slightly higher fee for space cost as a result of having vacant space. In this particular situation, in addition to that, we have lease space across the street. And that's where judicial administrative staff is, and there's a cost for that lease. So the goal is to go take one step back, Department of Libraries used to occupy the connector, again, between the pavilion and the Supreme Court, and they used to have the stack area, which is literally, that's what it's called. It's got a bunch of metal stacks, but those metal stacks are structural to that room, essentially. And so what that means is that in order for us to renovate that space, we need to shore it up, remove the stack area, and then our goal is to put in 2 floors in that location, which would then allow us to consolidate all of the judicial staff that's across the street and co-locate them all together in the Supreme Court stack area, which we really, really want to do. And again, that allows us to optimize that space. So this one is near and dear to my heart because I want to make sure that we're using our state-owned space effectively. We saw it too.
It's huge.
Yeah, so we're visit to it. Yeah.
There's a ladder room in there, and it's a beautiful space.
It is.
So I'm excited about. And this one's been on our plans for a while, so I'm happy to see it progress forward.
Well, it only makes sense, it's so darn close right here, it's just nice.
And then we can get out of that lease space across the street, which is an operational savings to the state and the taxpayers. White River Junction, Windsor District Courthouse renovations.
Let's do.
The White River Courthouse.
Yeah. No.
Perhaps the picture looks.
It was built in 1987. And with this one, the primary goal of this one is to replace the heating and air conditioning units here. The other component of this is that we'll also upgrade for ADA. And the big one is that in the front of the building, we talked about judicial. Typically speaking, they will have someone that is basically processing you into the building. And so right now, there's no space for that. It's really cramped. So there's really no great ability to work within that space. So in addition to replacing HVAC, upgrading ADA, and some other things, we are looking to add a vestibule onto the building so there's better flow from a security perspective.
And it's on the river, Connecticut River.
On the backside,
It
it's.
is, and the bank is
Drops
looking
right
in.
off to the river.
Wow,
The bank is looking in, and we're also looking to stabilize that bank as part of this
It's actually
project.
good though, when you do this, how much more efficient they are. If you were 20, 30 years ago, they didn't have to do any kind of air conditioning or heating. Lot more efficiency, I'm sure.
And this was one of the last buildings that the judicial branch opened during the pandemic because the system is so old and antiquated, there was no way to meet their needs for reopening during the pandemic. We have, judicial branch did some workarounds, some temporary workarounds to increase that airflow, but it's not ideal. So again, just another reason why we need to replace the HVAC system.
so you have plenty of measurements or tools to measure air now, I bet, right?
Certainly do. We know a lot about what's going on in our buildings behind the scenes. 133 State Street in Montpelier, this is actually for legislative IT space. So right now, legislative IT is located in 9 Baldwin, which is a very small home. And again, it doesn't function or flow very well. The Agency of Digital Services, so executive branch, moved their servers to the cloud. And so the server room they were using at 133 became vacated right around the time I think I started in 2017, and now that space is vacant. So during the pandemic, when the legislature was looking for more space, they recognized that there was a vacancy here. Money had already been appropriated to the project and changed it for legislative IT. So we are working with them now to design that space. They're basically going to take up a little over half of the space. One side of it will be for offices, a build space. There'll be a meeting space there. And then in this back corner, which if you ever like a tour, we're happy to show you. In the back corner, that's where the new ledge IT servers will go. Right now, they're in the basement here in the State House, which is not a great place for them to be. So they will be relocated over at 133 State Street.
Cars parked there, they have electricity plug-ins, right? Where those cars are parked.
Yes,
Now,
the angled cars on the left hand.
who has access to
Oh,
those?
sorry.
Those electric, those hookups.
So those are, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just playing along. The first 2 spaces in that row are currently signed public. The remaining spaces in that row are legislative parking during the session.
So the 2 were anyone, public?
Anyone,
Now, how do we charge them?
we charge them by the kilowatt hour consumed.
So when they plug in, they have a credit card there or something? And
Yeah, I pay with my watch.
Yeah, I pay with my phone.
really?
Yeah, and it'll be like $2 or something for 4
That's
hours.
interesting.
It was a free ride until the beginning of the session.
Oh,
okay.
really?
Having nothing to do with your return, of course.
Yeah, right.
Well, no, I'm just curious
Coincidence.
how you pay it, because nobody's there to pay it, you pay it automatically.
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah,
parking
well,
meter.
Yeah, there's an app though. I mean, you do have to, it's not as easy as a parking.
So
meter.
you can't leave your car there all day, if you did, it'd cost you a lot of money.
No, once your battery's charged, it stops
Yeah,
charging.
but how about the next person that wants to use
You
it?
should move your car.
But if you don't,
I don't know what happens. I mean, at some point,
So-
if they got really tough, they could tow it.
So we do have the ability to regulate, I mean, BGS again, one of
You're
the
not- you're not
lovely
gonna
things
stay
about being
down
the
there.
BGS commissioner is that we get to deal with parking. We do have the ability to tow.
yeah, but you're not gonna stand out there and see how long a car's been there. I just wonder how faithful people are to move their car.
We did put out a memo and we encouraged people that after 4 hours, we would very nicely would like them to move their vehicle so that
Right.
people could charge. And we do have the ability to go out there, if we got a call from Janet Miller or somebody else, and they said, hey, this car's been sitting here for 2 days. It's not fair to the rest of us.
That's
Then
why I'd like to everybody get a chance to use it, and not just sit there and park the car all day for nothing.
Right.
That would
Yeah.
drive me crazy if I.
There's some places, there's some models around, and I'm sure it's not here, but there's some models around that they're talking about if that was to happen, that you get a significant charge on your credit card. So there's models out there that will encourage people to, once their charge is up, to
Would
move.
someone have to go there and see it, or it automatically?
No,
Oh, okay, when it,
the system would do that, and they'll give you a level, I'm not saying it's here,
Okay.
but here, go ahead.
that
I-
makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Senator Harrison and I are both EV drivers, I'm gathering. So depending on where you plug in, it's programmed by whomever owns that particular box. And so I've been on systems where I plug in and first I get a message on my phone that says, hey, your car is
Okay.
charged, please move your car. And 20 minutes later, if you don't move your car in 10 minutes, we're gonna start charging you
Okay,
$2
okay,
every
there's the
30
follow-up.
minutes. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, 'cause I just don't want somebody to leave the car.
Well, but this one doesn't do it yet.
Well, that's because it's mostly legislators and we can trust legislators to do the right thing.
The administration did not want us to charge a penalty fee. So that was a discussion we had with the administration, and at this point, we don't have any reason to believe that people are abusing the time that they have.
So
It's all complaint driven, right?
In the future, if we elected to, but we have decided.
The legislator goes down there, supposed to go down 2 hours, move their car somewhere else.
So we encourage 4-hour
Yeah,
charging.
after 4 hours, they gotta move their car. I'll bet you they're not.
I have actually,
Oh.
and,
okay,
and there's
good.
also 2 different, types of chargers, and on the lower level chargers, I mean, my car could take 8 hours.
That's right.
So,
That's a level
so you
one.
have to have a different, amount of time
Oh.
depending on the,
Oh,
on
The
the type
level
of
2s are roughly
charger.
4 hours to charge.
Right, and that's
Again, it
what mine
depends on the
is,
battery and
yeah.
all of these other things, but.
Some are 110 volts, some are 220
Oh, okay. I
volts.
just-
so it's like
I
twice
wanna
as
make sure they're being utilized as much as they can, that's all I'm trying to do, everybody.
Oh, totally.
My experience as I've watched these roll out just inside the
Yeah,
building is that the electric car people kind of form an informal club and someone will say, hey, I'm parked here this morning. You want a regular space? Let's swap in the afternoon. And so
Oh,
I
good.
know that you guys are
Right, I'd like to
self-organized.
see that.
There's probably a caucus meeting that we don't know about.
That's funny. There is a list, but I haven't seen the list, even though I offered to join what I've been doing is going out in the middle of the day because they're more popular in the morning, so I'm figuring if I use the afternoon time, then if I'm a little bit late, it's not gonna be a problem.
But
because
you have to
nobody
go
wants
get your
it.
car, wherever it is, and bring it over there.
Right, but it's not that far away, and it's
Okay.
actually good to get out of the building.
Okay, I just didn't know, winter time.
And there's
Yeah, I'll
another
show you
across the
sometime if you
street,
wanna see.
Yeah.
more across the street, where,
Meg at 136.
near the Arts Council, so there are
Okay,
more
thank
spaces
you.
there.
But I don't think we can use those. Those are
We absolutely can
BGS.
use
Don't they say BGS on them? The
All of
sign
them are
says BGS.
Technically, all of these are BGSs.
But these signs say legislator.
That's
and I
because
couldn't-
it's on Aiken Avenue, which we have worked with the Sergeant at Arms to provide parking to the legislative branch. And so that's why they say legislative parking only, but
Okay.
that's because it falls within Aiken
Okay.
Avenue, which is dedicated to the legislature.
But we're permitted to use the
You
BGS ones?
absolutely
I
can
didn't know
use the
that.
ones over.
I didn't know that. That's pretty good to.
Yeah, just go over there in the morning. They're
Okay.
usually open in the morning.
Cool.
Our
Absolutely.
fleet vehicles charge on them at night, and then they vacate in the morning, and then staff fills in during the day. It's the current world order.
It's good to
And
know.
it's a large bank, we just put in, how many are there?
Like
8 heads?
8 or 12, it's.
No, I saw it. It
No,
just
it's-
didn't say on the sign that I could use.
2.
We're
Electric or I?
Okay.
All electric.
No worries, I just.
No, we've been having an internal dialogue, we don't.
I want to drag race with a Corvette someday.
It's gonna be neat. We don't have enough charging stations, that's what we're trying to do, we gotta need more charging stations.
That's what I hear.
That's another.
I wouldn't wanna be stranded in an electric car somewhere else.
I have a hybrid.
Yeah, hybrid, makes
Yeah.
sense to me, but electric, drive me crazy.
I can make it all the way to Colchester from here.
Yeah, but then you gotta spend 4 hours at Colchester charging, and get back home. Well, you get paid for that.
Hopefully it's at Mazda store.
Yeah.
Go to the hardware store, go to Mazda's, that's up.
Are you on company time?
Oh, of course not.
He's getting pretty deep here.
Your point is well taken, Senator. So the next one is Newport, the Northern State Correctional Facility boiler replacement. Again, not all that exciting. But the facility was built in 1993 and the boilers are original to the building. So again, we say infrastructure roughly lasts 20 years. We're well beyond 20 years. So the boilers need to be replaced. Barry McFarland roof replacement and brick facade repair. So I have seen this one myself personally. This is a 4-story client service building, primarily for the Agency of Human Services. It was built in 1915 with 2 additions in 1933 and 1948. And we bought the building in 2001. Prior to us purchasing it, it was a hospital. So over time, just like anything else, right, we've got weather, we've got rain and sun and ultraviolet light. And over time, things like roofs and the mortar and the bricks start to deteriorate over time. And so this is to basically do just that, replace the roof and repair the brick facade before the bricks start falling off the building.
What's in there now? Sorry.
So Agency of Human Services is the primary occupant of this building. We do have a couple of other ones as well. Yeah, it's a client service building. A&R used to be in there, we moved them, I believe. They may still have a small footprint in that building. Beyond AHS, I'm not sure who else might be in that building. I think it's primarily them.
I think that's who.
Yeah, and it's client services, so that's what clients in it. It's a big building. St. Albans Northwest State Correctional Facility roof replacement, more roofs. We should have a game around the word roof. I won't say what kind of game, but. So it was originally constructed in 1969. You can see that it's a large facility and we have many, many different roofs because we have many, many different buildings that now need to be replaced. Replacing roofs is really important, right? Because that's where your water leaks in. Then you start having issues potentially with mold and health and safety. And because it's a correctional facility, right? We have incarcerated individuals in that building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we need to make sure that we're keeping water out of the building. It also obviously causes building damage as well. Middlesex Central Services roof replacement. So another roof, like I said, we're gonna have a party. So this is a steel metal frame building. The roof shop, we bought brand new equipment for our print and postal shop that's in that building. Basara is also in that building on the other side. We bought brand new $500,000 equipment. We just put in a couple of months ago. And when you know, there was a leak right on top of it and it has already done some minor damage to the equipment. So print and postal is expensive. This is where all of your records are in the archives. It's a very, very important building and we have to replace the roof and that's what this is for. Statewide R22 refrigerant phase out on page 27. So R22 was used for a long time. It is no longer, they have phased it out. You're no longer allowed to use it. There was some R22 that has already been used on the market, but that's becoming harder to find.
Guess somebody paid through those, that stuff. Oh, boy.
Sure do. And as you can see, we have R22 in 38 of our buildings across the state. And there are 103 units. That's a lot of units and a lot of R22. We also have 221 heat pumps. So the goal of this is really to get a handle on where do we have all of these units across the state? What condition age are they in? And then we're slowly going to phase them out and replace them with other systems. While we're doing that though, we're gonna harvest the R22 from those units so that we save that R22 and then we can use them for the units that we continue to have to maintain over time.
That's an idea, yeah.
But it will become a crisis if we don't start planning to phase it out. Middlesex master plan design and decommissioning of the Middlesex temporary therapeutic residence. So I'm not sure if you've seen it when you drive by on Route 2, but basically in 2013, following the flood from Tropical Storm Irene, we had many patients in the Waterbury State Office Complex, but obviously when the flood came, took out that building and that facility. One of the systems of care that they needed was some type of secure therapeutic environment. And so we put up temporary modular units that were only intended to be there for a few years.
Who's the guy with the whiskers?
We are just about to, do you know who that is?
Yes, he was a curator, George, no,
Archivist.
Greg Sampason, the archivist, yes.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's great.
That's a great photo.
Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant is in
I
there
love
somewhere.
the beard.
Yeah. I know, it's a perfect
I remember
beard
him
too.
just be around here, yeah. Is he still around?
No, he retired years ago. I don't know how long ago.
Oh, okay.
So that's the old photo.
I guess so.
Yes,
Nice, I like it. So really now we have a situation where the Middlesex Police moved to Berlin. So we have a vacant building. It was an old schoolhouse many years ago before we acquired that property. We have these trailers, which will need to be, or modular units, which will need to be decommissioned on the site. The current building and flow and function for both Basara and Print and Postal is not ideal because they share common space and they really should be secure and confidential. And also their loading dock in the back does not work for them. either. So we know we're gonna have to make some modifications to this site. In addition to that, we are looking at the Department of Liquor and Lottery is looking to have a new liquor and lottery warehouse and to have co-located office facilities. So we're looking to see, would that fit on this site? So that is what all of this money is to be used for.
Is that where the journal and the calendars are printed?
It is. That's where our printed postal books are. That's where many of your legislative books and pamphlets and different things come from. We actually hire temp in the wintertime just for
They
you,
work all night.
and they work all night.
Yeah.
They don't give us the information at the end of the day. If it's 7, 8 o'clock at night, they got.
That's right.
Morning, we got our desk. That always amazed me how they.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff.
We'll say the print and postal shop is the most efficient group we have at
It has to be.
BGS. They are amazing.
I've never.
You should
never
watch
seen
them
it like
someday.
Never seen the morning when we don't have it. It's just, it's automatic. It's here. It's on your desk. It's just amazing how they do it. It's just, sometimes till the end of the session, you got stacks of.
Yeah, well, budget takes
Yeah.
pages.
And it's tax time.
Yeah.
Right? So we're up against the tax deadline. This is the time of year where many agencies are putting out information because it's the beginning of the year. This is their slam time. So in addition to the legislature, they're getting slammed by a lot of other agencies and departments.
Wow.
And they keep up with it all. It's amazing. And then we have the Pittsburgh Academy, the administration building, the West Cottage, and it sounds like there's arcades. But I'm probably gonna,
People
Say-
staying in the dormitory are not
How am I
allowed to
saying
eat in the dining hall.
in the books,
Where's Jason said that's with Eric.
on page 29. Maybe I'm not saying that word correctly.
It looks like arcade.
Well, so I would say.
It does, but maybe I'm not reading that right.
Good there.
It's okay, Jeff.
Okay, it's the connections between East Cottage and West Cottage. There are these covered.
That's what it's called.
It is an
Yeah,
arcade, yes.
okay.
Okay, I think of something different when I think about
Me
it.
too.
A lot more fun than this.
Right, so
That's to be a little bit long.
we recently invested in the East Cottage. And what we did was to, what we did is to refit that space. Before, it was used as office space, but really what they need is they need beds, overnight accommodations for all the training that they do for the fire academy and then also the police academy. And so it was a very, very valuable investment of dollars into this facility. Over the last few years, they put together a joint council that was Representative Shah's idea. But basically, because we have a lot of different folks that share this campus, which includes the Vermont State Police, the Training Council, and Fire Safety, they decided to form a governance committee. And that governance committee is now working together to determine collaboratively, how do they want to use all the space? What are the unmet needs of the campus? Those kinds of things. And so this basically is to do a major renovation of both the administration building, which is the main building that you see there, and the West Cottage, which is obviously on the other side of the building from the East Cottage. And so BGS is really looking at the nuts and bolts of the building, so things like the heating system, structurally, if you've ever been in the building, lots of sags in the floor. It also has non-tube wiring. So it definitely needs a lot of upgrades from that perspective. And then in addition to that, it doesn't meet the programmatic needs of everybody that uses that campus. So we're gonna join two efforts, which makes a lot of sense. If we're gonna start moving walls around, it makes sense to do that at a time when we're also replacing, for example, the electrical, or if we're also shoring up the structural components of the building. So that's what this project is for. The Montpelier 133-109 tunnel, did you go through the tunnel?
We
We
did.
did.
It's always exciting to go through the tunnel.
We saw the fix, we saw the problem.
It was toasty warm. At one time, before my time, I was told that the tunnel was actually open and that kids used to like to skateboard down it.
Yeah, it was a very short cut for them.
It's no longer that way though. But as you can see, right, you got to see the evidence of water infiltration. And so we definitely.
There's no tunnel that goes to 133 though, right? It's just, it goes.
Yes, that one goes to 133. Goes from 111 Supreme Court Building
Yeah.
to 133 State Street.
Okay.
Oh, it does go that way?
Oh.
Yes, yes.
Oh.
It connects the two buildings.
And that's where we were the other day?
yes.
You're talking about across.
No, I'm talking about the,
120,
yeah,
B&B, it
yeah,
does not.
B&B,
No,
okay,
it
there we
goes this
go.
way, across the
Right.
lawn.
That is correct. There we go.
Yeah, sorry, Joe.
And then there's also a second tunnel system That's kind of this tunnel system that goes from 133 over to 6 Ball.
They took that one also. We did grant.
I never liked
The our side.
No, I've been through it 3 or 4 times, but it's not something that I don't want to do.
My kids, it's like the favorite part when they come visit mom for lunch,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, can you go in the tunnel?
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, let's go in the tunnel." So they love the tunnel. I like the tunnel in the winter time too, because I don't like to be cold. So it's a nice way for me to get from one place to the other without getting cold.
Go for your walk right here, see that?
That's right. We do have radon in the tunnel though, so we shouldn't be doing too much walking in the tunnel. But hopefully we'll be able to address that problem. And in addition to that, we need to repave, I'm sure you've all seen it. We own Aiken Avenue. This is where V-Trans should pick it up, because they're the pavement people, and we are not. But if you've been on Aiken Avenue.
Crazy talk, huh? Crazy talk.
If you've been on Aiken Avenue,
They start charging the legislature for parking if they own the road, right?
There you go.
so as if you've seen, it's pretty, the pavement, you're seeing cracking in other forms
Yeah.
that it really needs to be repaved. The only reason we haven't done it is twofold. One is because of this tunnel project. There's no reason to pave it and then rip the road up and then repave it. The other one is that in 2 Aiken, they're going, though it is not required, the legislative branch has decided to put in a sprinkler system in that building, and that requires a connection in the street to the water line. So that's another reason why we want to wait until that work is done before we go and pave it.
Did you say the lawn is impervious, is
They
considered?
consider
impervious?
lawn to be impervious because water doesn't really flow through lawn. In fact, ours is so compacted because people are constantly on it all the time that we actually go through a couple of times a year and we do those little plugs.
Reiterate, yes.
Just like a golf course. That's funny,
Just like a
okay.
golf course.
Wow.
And to be honest with you, the lawn's looking worse than it ever has, so it's gonna look horrible in the spring. If anybody was at the tree lighting ceremony, I think we just had mud pits out there. And that's because we're no longer allowed to use certain types of chemicals on the lawn anymore. But that also
But the
means,
ground's not froze either, was it? So-
it wasn't frozen,
Yeah.
but it means that there's insects that are attacking the lawn, and there's things that we
Just
can't
spray it at night.
do about it.
Come on.
It's joking, fertilizers. And so, we have all sorts of problems. We have deer that we're eating our tulips, so now we can't do tulips anymore. We have all sorts of things happening.
I was in the fertilizer business about 30 years ago, and that was a joke that we used to say when organic was first making its way. We'd say, well, the difference between organic and regular is that we spray the organics at night.
So it needs help. It's not gonna look pretty in the spring, but we are working with the Agency of Agriculture, and they have some
Yeah.
potential
Good
ideas
to
to
them,
help us out.
That's a beautiful picture right there. That really
Yeah.
is a nice picture.
Yes, I like that, that's really nice.
Yes, I have always enjoyed the State House lawn. So this is David Sheets' line item. I'm sure when you get to this line item, he will be very excited to come in and talk to you. This is also considered an annual appropriation or an annual request for BGS. But this is about State House replacement of historic interior finishes. So these are your carpets and your drapes. Some of your seating. So in the House chamber, for example, all of those seats need to be replaced. And so, or renovated.
Well, there's one light bulb out. on the street.
Restored.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, we sit there when we're.
I saw that too.
You saw that.
I saw there was one single light bulb and it was
Yeah.
close to where the governor.
And there's always been one out. It's funny because there's what, 200 or 300 up there, you know, it's just.
That is true. So I noticed that we have one out as well. But this is David's line item. He's very passionate about it. And I will
Oh,
tell you,
really?
he cares about the State House more than any other building in the state. So David takes a lot of loving care of the State House, but it does require some amount of investment every year to do that work. And then getting back to, I have one more after this, getting back to EV charging stations. So Senator Mazza, you are 110% correct.
Wow.
Do not have-
have.
See, now you just walk out the building. You say, I'm done. We do not have enough electrical vehicle charging stations around the state, and this is actually a little bit of a story between, one, we have the fleet, right? So, and when Senator Ash was here, he was very successful. and
Great, I'm pushing it.
He did.
He did a good job.
He did a great job. So as of July 1st, 2019, we were required to replace 50% of our vehicles with either hybrid or fully electric vehicles. As of July 1st, 2021, that percentage went up to 75%. So that's for both the vehicles we lease out, right, to our clients and the ones we have in the motor pool. The problem with that is, non-hybrid vehicles are becoming harder and harder to find.
Right.
So right now, you're seeing more hybrid vehicles being plug-in, sounds like the kind that you have, Senator. But then that requires charging stations, and we do not have them all over the state.
You know, I talked about this morning, in transportation, we talked about that this morning, because I know we got the money to do it, we got money, where are you gonna locate them? How much commission, like, for example, if a gas station wants to take them on, do they get a commission of the power that they take up their yard? How many spots do you have? And it's a question that everyone who says to me, you want me to buy an electric car, but where am I gonna charge? I wanna go to here to Boston or wherever it is. Where do I charge them? And you gotta think about that when you travel, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You gotta look at.
Well, with a hybrid, I don't,
Yeah, I'm
but,
sorry, yeah, you got.
but I do care about having charging being, I do care about it being convenient.
Sure,
and-
sure.
And so I have one at my house.
Oh, sure,
And
sure.
The governor spoke about
the
it,
state makes it available to have it
Yeah, you
at
got-
home, which is really important.
Senator, I thought I've traveled around a little bit and I found like one of the most common places to hit a quick charger in New York State is a Stewart shop.
Yeah.
Because they're happy to sell you a burger and a
Well, that's what I'm saying.
milkshake while
You
you're
gotta try
charging
into
your
a
car.
business
Yeah.
that wants you or gets a commission.
Mhm.
But if it's a
Yeah.
gas station, where if they're gonna sell less gasoline. for
Right.
example, if they get electric, they may get a 10 cents a kilo, I don't know, I'm just throwing numbers
Yeah,
out.
I know you don't have pumps in front of your store, but what I've heard anecdotally from other folks who run stores that have pumps is the pumps aren't the money, it's the snacks. And so.
Right.
Oh, no, that's.
So it's
Yeah,
really
sure.
good draw.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they're doing that,
Yeah,
'cause
you
I
go to the
was-
store, buy water and soda and candy, that's
Yeah.
sure, that's the money, draw them in.
I always thought there was gonna be a business model with that, so I'm glad to hear that, where if you had a fast charger, 22 minutes, so you plug your car in, you go use the bathroom, you pick up something to eat,
Right,
pick up some
right.
snacks, you go back out, and next thing you know, 22 minutes is over, and off you go. And so, yeah.
Yeah, the New Hampshire liquor store has a very nice fast charger. I have found.
Yeah, we won't let that.
We're going to a liquor store in New Hampshire.
We're
Yeah,
lost.
it's a good question.
Charging
Over
station.
there?
Just passing through, sir.
He's using the facilities.
Yeah.
I see, yeah, I see, yeah. Yeah, the people come in my liquor store, they're just coming from the facilities.
So in order to continue to support meeting that statutory requirement of the 75%, it means that we need to install more EV charging stations at different state-owned buildings across the state. So with $1 million, that's gonna get you roughly 32 or 34 dual ports for 68 basically charging locations.
Yep. So you'll do dual, so you'll be able to 2 spaces.
That's right. So
Yeah.
you will have 68 heads, as they like to say,
Yeah.
with 34 ports, because they'll be dual port.
And what-
And both 110 and 220 or just
Are they
one?
the two?
We're going level 2 now. We don't really do level 1, and I think we're also gonna look at investigating a few level 3s as well, because for the fleet, for example, they may be driving, we may have a customer driving from one office building to the other. They may only be there for an hour for a meeting, and then they have to get back home. So we are gonna look at some level 3s as well.
And Tesla also is going to, at some point, have to make theirs available to non-Tesla cars, which will be huge, because they have lots
think they
of
will?
things. Yeah, the,
I think they're making that
the
deal
federal
now.
government is making that happen.
Oh.
They're not doing it voluntarily, is my
Because they're
understanding.
building a store in Burlington, a retail store for Tesla's now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they got
Okay.
permit. We changed a lot for them last year, transportation. But they don't have a authorized dealer. They sell direct to the customer.
Oh, right.
They don't want a franchise.
Right.
So we had to make a provision that they can do that. They just required on Shelburne Road, there was a Price Chopper, at one of the stores that moved where Kmart was. And that building was empty and they just got the permit from South Burlington. They're putting their retail store there.
That's great.
So you can buy a Tesla, I imagine, in 6 months or so.
Right, and they have chargers all over the state.
That's what I heard.
A lot
I
of
didn't
chargers.
realize that.
Yeah, their network
And they're
is,
increasing them,
their network is pretty robust.
right.
They actually have it, well, we've talked about it several different times, but they also have an app, so when you do travel, like they all do, but they're pretty comfortable that you can travel across the United States fairly comfortably with a Tesla.
It's a big investment.
Right.
Go ahead, Eric.
Just another interesting thing on that front, they have a website where you can nominate locations for future fast charging. So I put in for the Kmart up in Newport, just so there'd be something closer to the interstate.
Yeah.
So, just thinking about the range and dropping them strategically. There's one in St. Jay, there's one, you know, they're around.
Tesla has that?
Yeah, there's
Oh,
one,
interesting.
there's one in St. Johnsbury.
But the app that you're talking about, or the?
Yeah, it's a website. You just go
Okay.
on and
So you could go coast to coast with a Tesla and just drive on their stations?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not hybrid, they're all electric.
Wow.
we mapped Joe to, where were you going?
Louisville.
Louisville, Kentucky. And you know, there was one point at which he was gonna have to wait an hour at a charger to really top off somewhere in Ohio.
Yes.
You know, and it's a little bit longer trip, but I'm an older person. I stop for the bathroom a lot, so it works out.
How's that coordinate with the charging?
But the I mean, mine.
Which
The
one do you stop
charging,
for first?
Well, I usually try and go as far as the car can, but sometimes the car wins.
I'm gonna pass over the last one, Bennington Monument. We haven't talked about that one.
Senator, it's
Is it your new lowest look?
Bennington
No, that,
Battle Monument.
no, I won't say it.
We'll talk after.
So the Bennington Battle Monument is not a building underneath BGS's jurisdiction. It is underneath historic preservation.
Yes.
Funding is being added to this section to basically put up some fencing, which would be the first part of securing the monument for a future project. What is happening with the monument right now is that the stone that they used when it was built and the mortar that they used when it was built was not high quality. This was a very long time ago. And over time, through again ultraviolet light and snow and rain and those kinds of things, it has been deteriorating slowly over time. In addition to that, there is a staircase inside the monument as well as an elevator. There is no heating. It's interesting, there was a time when the inside of the monument was heated. And then we went through the energy crisis of the 60s and 70s and they stopped heating it. So what that means is that in the wintertime, we're kind of on those shoulder seasons where you're getting a lot of freeze thaw, is that's what's happening inside of the monument. And it creates a lot of condensation and water. Water and electrical equipment don't mix very well. And so that elevator needs some significant work as well as the staircases. I mean, there's times where the elevator just shuts down, it doesn't even work. So I sat in on a presentation recently where a consultant has done an initial evaluation and believes that $10 to $12 million will need to be invested into that monument soon.
Does this open the door for future money? We've never done this before. Have we?
When you say opens a door for future money.
Yeah, they're gonna ask for money every year.
So it's my understanding that ACCD is gonna try to see if they can leverage some federal funding. But this would be the first step because after this, the next step would be to put up staging.
Yeah, but I'm saying, is this gonna be a commitment to the capital, this capital construction bill, that we're gonna have money going to the monument every year?
So there's a major maintenance line item in the historic preservation section of the capital bill, and they use that, just like we use major maintenance on state-owned buildings, they use that appropriation to maintain their historic buildings. So they have been using some of that funding for the Bennington Monument over time.
Well, who's gonna pay the 10 million when it comes up to 12 million?
So the goal is to try to see if they can get a grant from the federal government to pay for that versus the state paying for it.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of money. They were talking, what, 40 million over the years when you complete the structure on the outside, because when you put up staging for that building, you got some serious money.
So the estimate on the staging, I believe, was 1 million from the
That's what I'm
consultant,
saying, just the staging.
because it's on the outside and the inside as well. It is the second tallest obelisk, I learned. Washington is number 1, that's right.
Maybe the angle is that we get Bennington Battle Day declared a national holiday.
There you go.
That's a little swoop in.
I say we turn it over to New York State.
Right.
There is a-
Change the line or try to put it on rollers, like roll it across.
Give them an easement.
Tell Mary Morrissey you said that.
Really? Yeah, that's what, yeah, I gotta talk to some.
So some people have said, no, never mind.
We're still alive.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that is section 2. I know, it was quite a bit, wasn't it?
Well, it's a
You
lot,
are very
it's a lot.
knowledgeable. Let me tell you a copy of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You were very, very.
As a committee can see, there's just a ton of maintenance, and that's what you get when you have a lot of buildings
This is
in
the
this
first,
climate.
this is the first commissioner that really knows this.
I spend a lot of time with the teams, right, Joe?
Yes.
And you love every moment of it.
I just want to compliment you on that because most of the commissioners turn it over to their staff all the time, but you know it. And that's a lot to know.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot to have, yes.
Mr. Chair, I have a question related to this line number that we have here, which looks like it was just a part of the spreadsheet, but it does not match up with the line numbers at the top of this, and I'm a detail person, it's bothersome to me that if I look at line number 6, it may not be line number 6 on here, so is there a way to
Would you like to
coordinate
speak to
that?
that?
I can check with the fifth floor if they consent to modifying their spreadsheet. I generally consider it to be sacred, but I'm sure we could arrange for it. Trying to keep our.
I mean, you make a good point, because you could just move line
Aren't we
one.
looking for line numbers to go inside with line numbers of budget? I mean, I
No.
thought that would be sort of intuitive, but.
That would be a good, that would be a definite
But then
process
there's-
improvement that I support. No, don't be sorry.
What happened, in the front of your book, you have a condensed version, you cut off the out years for the 10-year request. In the back of the book, you do have the whole 10-year request. So what you're seeing is you're seeing projects that are listed that were not supported. So it was not after the request was finalized. We didn't, the fifth floor did not update the spreadsheet. It still shows those line items that were not supported. Because it's part of the 10-year.
Yeah, I think the idea is that they want you to see everything they were asked to do, to show you what they're actually doing, but I think we could probably find a way to fix lines and lines and make it very possible.
Thank you.
I'd ask.
Take care of my boy.
I'm the same way, so I completely understand.
Nice to see you.
I like everything we did, tell you well organized.
It's called joint
Ladies
business
will follow.
lifeline on that one.
Line number, I should be able to see it.
You make a very good point.
Because it doesn't.
Last year, we learned,
Just add four.
they did a lot of color coding on the spreadsheet last year, because they were trying to separate things like the cash fund from, and we learned that we had a senator who was
There are
colorblind.
4 to
Oh,
everything.
right, that's
Right,
right, last year,
right.
and we never thought about that before. So
Yeah,
it's those
that's an
things
issue.
that you don't
Yeah.
necessarily think about that
You
you
should
should.
the line item number into the name in the cell.
You could just add 4 and then they match up.
Oh, yeah, everyone.
It's not
I
like
would
they
go
all-
through and like mark them up this way.
So
Leaving
in,
us questions.
in the book, page 5 says it's number 2. And on the spreadsheet, if you added 4 to that, it would be 6, which is what it is.
We may have some mass townspeople and we shouldn't be outing, them, should we?
Yeah. I'm good until it gets a double figure.
Yeah, you gotta take your shoes
I
off.
can't go anywhere. 4, 2, 6, you're good.
So, we finished here today. I will
Yeah.
go back in-house in corrections and institutions tomorrow. I think we got through we got
Sure, you
5
stay straight up.
projects.
And that's what you're doing over there. You're just going back down through and all of that stuff. If anything changes, let us know. We're on for tomorrow again.
I assume so. I haven't looked at my schedule.
Okay.
No, we're not.
No, I was
Okay.
talking about, no, you,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yes, we
yeah.
are, absolutely. Yes. Sometimes it just takes me a second.
No, me too.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, well, last time you had to call me, I was late, so.
that's right. I got you now.
Yeah.
I still don't have Mazda on speed dial.
Was it?
I have a question.
Yes.
Since we're talking about spreadsheets being unreadable, this was really hard for me. And this is nothing about your department, this is about the historic preservation people. They had numbers printed in these dark blue lines.
Yeah.
at the bottom. Is that something Libby could do? Just contact them and ask them to get us a copy where, like, this is a lighter color, so we can actually see the
Yeah.
totals in the bottom of everyone's.
Yes.
Laura Treishman.
Sorry?
Laura Treishman.
Right. Is that somebody that,
I'm sure they would
Contact
be,
for us so
I'm
that-
sure they would be very happy.
I'm sure they would too.
To,
well, I'm complaining about spreadsheets, I might as well just like close the chapter.
Have you looked on the webpage copy to see if you can read it there?
I don't like to have a computer run.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, that would help the public too. I have a units thing.
Units?
Actually, yes, so.
You're making me feel good.